At the wedding banquet, I offered a toast to my husband's white moonlight, but she publicly smashed the glass, saying, "I lost to you and let you have Ethan, but you shouldn't humiliate me in front of everyone." My husband flew into a rage, berating me as a petty opportunist and expressing disgust at my jealousy, then tore off his boutonniere and chased after his departing white moonlight. I rushed forward to explain but was struck by a car. My husband merely glanced back at me without pausing his pursuit of his white moonlight. I was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment, and after narrowly escaping death, my heart completely gave up hope. Upon regaining consciousness, I called my father, with whom I had lost contact for 3 years, saying, "Old man, I accept the family-arranged marriage." On the day of my discharge, Ethan still did not appear. He never once visited me during my hospitalization. My cast remained intact, forcing me to take a taxi home, yet I found myself unable to unlock the door upon arrival. With no other option, I called Ethan, only to hear his white moonlight, Kathy, answer, saying, "Is that Sister Lana back? Ethan's in the shower." Before I could respond, the door clicked open from inside. Kathy, upon seeing me, warmly urged me in, saying, "Sister Lana, my poor memory always forgets the password, so Ethan changed it to my birthday. You didn't know, did you? I'll write it down for you later." Kathy wore a new, semi-transparent black nightgown, her wet hair clinging to her chest and soaking her thin shirt, just as Ethan emerged from the master bedroom, wrapped in a towel and drying his hair. In the past, seeing them alone at home, both freshly showered, would have enraged me, leading to a heated argument with Ethan. This time, I merely nodded faintly and carried my luggage inside. Noticing my lack of anger, Ethan discarded his towel and offered an unconvincing explanation. "Kathy's voltage regulator broke, so she's staying with us for a few days. Don't misunderstand." Seeing Ethan, I recalled the day he frantically chased Kathy, ignoring me as I was hit by a car behind him, nearly losing my life. In that moment, my feelings for him vanished entirely. "I didn't misunderstand," I said, continuing toward the bedroom with my suitcase in tow. "Kathy's family is abroad, and it's unsafe for a girl alone. We grew up together, so if I don't take her in, who will?" I listened quietly as he finished. He likely forgot that, to be with him, I too had severed ties with my family for 3 years. If Kathy's situation was tough, what about mine? I said I didn't misunderstand, I repeated, forced to stop as he blocked my path. "Lana, you've been cold since you walked in, I'm explaining, but you won't listen. What do you want?" He nagged, gripping my arm. Losing patience, I pushed his hand away and said coldly, "I told you, I really didn't misunderstand." The fracture in my hand hadn't fully healed, and pain forced me to let go, causing the luggage bag to hit the floor with a dull thud. The room's lights revealed a pile of mingled men's and women's clothes on the bed. Ethan, startled, grabbed them, saying, "We got them wet earlier and laid them out to dry. Don't overthink it." I looked around in confusion at the chaotic bedroom, with no space to step, muttered and turned to the guest room. After my shower, my father called, "Lana, it's best you've figured it out. I'm old, and you're my only daughter for 3 years. You refused to return and take over the family business for that man, unaware of how much your mom and I missed you. If he were sincere, fine, but in 3 years, he never introduced you to his family or friends, showing he doesn't care as much as you think since you're determined to return. How about setting the wedding in a month?" My father's words left me stunned. Previously, I found them harsh, believing he looked down on Ethan due to his wealth, and I'd fiercely argue how much Ethan and I loved each other. This time, I was speechless. "All right, I can wait until after Professor Chen's birthday banquet. Handle the wedding as you see fit," I replied. Just after hanging up, footsteps approached. Ethan pushed open the guest room door, holding a box of fresh mangoes. He set the fruit on the table, frowning suspiciously. "I faintly heard you mention a wedding. I've told you several times, since it's postponed, there's no rush." Seeing his panicked expression, I calmly said, "Not ours. A relative asked me to help plan theirs," and he finally relaxed. He opened the mango box, mentioning Kathy with a smile. "Kathy, worried you'd be upset, moved to a hotel and asked me to bring you fresh mangoes as an apology. I stayed silent. A flash of displeasure crossed Ethan's eyes. Lana, enough is enough, stop this, continuing only harms everyone. I laughed. After all these years together, don't you know I'm allergic to mangoes? Then I turned to find the hairdryer. Ethan followed me, hesitating to speak but ultimately remaining silent. Once, he remembered all my allergies and our anniversaries. The first time I had an allergic reaction to a mango dessert, he rushed me to the hospital at midnight, frantic. Now, it's not forgetfulness, but a lack of love. Ignoring him, I took out the doctor's medicine to redress my wounds. Seeing my scars, guilt flickered in his eyes as he reached for a cotton swab to help. As I was about to refuse, his phone rang. Kathy's weak voice came through. Ethan, I think I ate something bad, my stomach hurts terribly, and I'm sweating. Can you bring me medicine? Hearing this, Ethan leapt up. Don't worry, I'll be right there. Lie down and stay put. After hanging up, he earnestly explained, Lana, Kathy's stomach issue flared up. I have to check on her. I swear there's nothing between us, or it wouldn't have waited until now. Don't be upset over this again. Before I could reply, he was out the door, knocking over the medicine bottles, which spilled across the table. Gazing at the now silent, empty house and the closed door, I couldn't help but smile wryly to myself. In the past, anything involving Kathy made him erratic and me insecure. He'd always say I didn't trust him. Now, he can rest easy, as I'll never doubt him again. After that day, Ethan never returned, but Kathy's Facebook updates were frequent, filled with hints of her happiness alone with him. I quietly blocked Kathy on Facebook, then watched the new electronic countdown timer tick away. On the 20th day of the countdown, I began preparing to resign. My work was nearing completion, yet I still aimed to finish it impeccably. The general manager, seeing wedding on my resignation letter, teased that rescheduling a wedding should indeed be timely. I lowered my head, paused, then smiled brightly. Not with him. The manager froze, sighing regretfully. I'd been busy with work handovers, and only on the second day after leaving the company did I find myself suddenly free. Glancing at the countdown timer, only 5 days remained. Dazed, I patted my face to stay alert and began packing. Ethan and I were together for years, and my love for photography left photos of us scattered around the house, with more stored on my camera and computer. Beyond photos, I kept gift boxes from his birthdays as mementos, partly to avoid repeating gifts in future years, along with his old love letters. Seeing them still weighed heavily on my heart. We were genuinely happy once. I cherished every moment with him, and he devoted all his spare time to me. He'd sometimes tease, looking at the photos, don't you ever tire of all these pictures? I'd jest, maybe one day I will, and I'll sneak off to be a heartbreaker, earning a fond pinch on my cheek as I collapsed laughing on the sofa. Ah, you broke it. Look what's in my heart. Oh, it's all you. We'd laughed together. Years later, I hadn't tired of him, but he had of me. After browsing a while, I took everything to the bathroom, burned it bit by bit, and flushed the ashes down the drain. Nothing of the past remained. Time flew. Ethan still didn't return, and over days of packing and cleaning, I erased every trace of myself from the house. Seeing 2 on the countdown, I grabbed my keys to get a gift for Professor Chen, our university professor of public courses and, in a way, Ethan's and my matchmaker. After much deliberation at the mall, I chose a jade pendant said to ward off misfortune for the aging Professor Chen, whose birthday marked my last day in this city before flying back for my wedding tomorrow. Last night, Ethan texted that work might keep him away. I didn't reply. Later, he called, accusing me, you're upset but won't say it. Why have people target Kathy at work? Apologize quickly, she's generous and won't hold it against you. I found it absurd that, after all these years, he thought I'd stoop to underhanded tactics. I hung up abruptly. His text followed instantly, Lana, you've gone too far. I can't understand how a good person turned into this. Ethan and I met in Professor Chen's university class. Once, when many, including Ethan, hadn't done their homework, the professor furiously demanded they stand. Passing me, he eyed us oddly. You two sit together every day, are you dating? Why did you do your homework but not push your partner to finish his? We both blushed. Back then, Lana could hardly imagine wasting years of youth on Ethan. Suppressing these reflections, I knocked on Professor Chen's door, and he eagerly pulled me inside upon seeing me. When I revealed I'd resigned and planned to leave the city for an arranged marriage, he pushed up his glasses in shock. Does Ethan know? He asked. We're not compatible, I replied without elaboration. Professor Chen sighed. Lana, I know you're a good girl who keeps things to herself. We've heard bits about the wedding. Ethan let you down, didn't he? I invited him today to mediate, but since you've decided, I won't say more. It's Ethan's loss. For years, I cut off my family for Ethan. Even when sick, no friend or relative stayed with me in the ward. I didn't cry then, nor when Ethan blamed me after the near-fatal car accident. Now, tears suddenly fell. Teacher, take care of yourself. Visit my home someday. As for Ethan, perhaps I was never the one he wanted to marry. I avoided the topic, chatted briefly with the professor, then prepared to leave. Then the doorbell rang. Ethan arrived with Kathy, who said, Ethan, travel's only fun with interesting people. Thanks for taking time to relax with me. Their hands clasped until he saw me and quickly let go. Sister Lana's here too. Don't misunderstand, I was just excited, Kathy said. We've been out these days, you must have been bored alone. Join us next time. Hearing Kathy, Ethan subtly pulled her behind him. Kathy means well, seeming fearful I'd harm her. I smiled wryly. Once, this would have hurt me deeply, but thankfully, I no longer loved him. At dinner, he focused solely on Kathy, not sparing me a glance, peeling shrimp and wrapping Peking duck for her. Their intimate chatter would make anyone call them sweet. Even Professor Chen couldn't bear it, slamming his chopsticks. Ethan, Lana's here. How can you be so close with another woman? You're outrageous. Kathy straightened up, wiping her mouth with a napkin. Teacher, don't be mad. Ethan and I grew up together, so we're a bit closer than others. Ethan, I'll do it myself, she said, her face betraying embarrassment, but he casually served her more. You're not wrong. Eat up. Professor Chen snorted angrily. I don't have such students. Then, glaring at Ethan, being so affectionate with someone else in front of Lana, what must she think? Aren't you afraid she'll be truly hurt and you'll never win her back? Ethan smirked. The wedding didn't happen, no certificate was issued, and she blocked me. How can I win her back? Keep it up, and you'll regret it when Lana marries someone else, the professor warned. Teacher, I tugged his sleeve, shaking my head, and he fell silent. Ethan acted knowing, grown up and still tattling to the teacher. I said I'd marry you, just not now. What's the rush? Are you that scared of not marrying? I looked up, scoffing. You're right, I fear not marrying, but what's that to you? Even if I stay single forever, I won't marry you. As tension rose, Kathy poured hot tea. Sister Lana, though you're older and we struggle to connect, I truly see you as a sister. Please don't fight over me. I'll toast you with tea as an apology. She raised the tea to her lips, but scalded herself, spilling it on her body and crying out, clutching her arm. Ethan frantically searched for burn ointment, his concern reminding me of the Ethan who once loved me deeply. Before I could process it, Ethan's reproach hit me. Lana, I'm so disappointed in you, he stormed out, and amid the professor's sighs, I took a taxi to the airport. In the car, Ethan called. As he began, Kathy's pained whimpers interrupted, and he urged anxiously, be gentle, she hates pain, go easy. After 30 seconds, he seemed to recall me. Lana, if you want us to work, apologize to Kathy. She got burned out of guilt. To this day, I don't know what I did wrong or why so many illogical blames fall on me. Looking at the car accident scars on my arm, all my pent-up grievances and disappointments burst forth. I spoke calmly. Ethan, let's not meet again since you know we never got the certificate. We're done. The plane's takeoff announcement sounded. I gave him no chance to reply and switched off my phone. On the plane, I fell into a deep sleep, dreaming a long dream of my years with Ethan, from early sweetness to the growing distance after Kathy's return. A boy beside me woke me. Need help? Pointing at my face, I realized I was crying and thanked him with a smile. Soon, the plane landed in a city free of Ethan. Before the exit, I saw my father waiting with assistants who took my things, his eyes red as he patted my arm. "You've worked hard." I hoarsely called Dad. He trembled, nearly stumbling, then nodded and led the way. His back showed me how much he'd aged. At home, my mother held my hands, inspecting them. "So many scars, how did this happen? You don't care for yourself, it pains me to see." Yet from that day to now, Ethan never asked if I was in pain. Sudden sorrow hit me, and I bowed my head, nose red, fearing my parents would notice. Seeing this, my mother sighed, then brightened. "By the way, tomorrow's wedding is nearly ready. The dress is in your room, chosen by your groom himself." I was curious about this man, willing like me to marry sight unseen in a flash wedding. To my questions, my mother smiled. "He says he'll answer you in person tomorrow night." I wanted to ask more, but exhaustion overtook me, nearly dozing on the sofa until my back wound rubbed, making me wince. My mother anxiously called the family doctor. When he removed my clothes, revealing my scarred back, she burst into tears. "Old Lou, look at your daughter, how much she's suffered," she said. To spare them worry, I kept that harrowing moment to myself. Seeing their concern, recalling the despair of Ethan's abandonment and the accident, followed by his baseless blame, I lowered my eyes, held her hand, and said, "Mom, I'll never leave you again." After another check by the doctor, I lay on the soft bed and fell asleep instantly. I slept until a servant knocked the next day. After washing, I donned a Chinese bridal gown, gazing at my radiant reflection. I couldn't help recalling my final year with Ethan, when his long-absent white moonlight, Kathy, returned. Facebook buzz about our wedding shifted. "Kathy's back, Ethan might not marry Lana now." I'd heard it, and it wasn't irrelevant. With parental pressure, I just wanted to marry quickly, so I meticulously planned a perfect wedding only to end up battered. Later, I overheard him with someone. "How's the wedding prep?" "Stirring coffee," he said. "Doesn't matter, it won't happen. We'd have married years ago if so, but with Kathy back, I've no intent to marry Lana. I just lack a good excuse." Marrying him was my long-held dream, but to him, it was a charade. I gambled he wouldn't ruin it, didn't confront him, and kept preparing, yet it fell apart. My eyes reddened unconsciously, seeing me stare at the mirror. My mother took my hand tenderly. "If you don't want to marry, it's fine, your dad and I just want your happiness. We rushed this, thinking you two had some history, maybe a mistake could turn into a good match, letting you settle with us. We fear you'll soften and return to Ethan," she added. Wiping tears, I said, "Mom, don't say that. I'm willing, and I trust your and Dad's judgment," easing her worries. Downstairs, my phone buzzed wildly. Answering, I heard Ethan yell, "Lana, what's wrong with you? Why so stubborn? You messed up out of pettiness. I just want an apology. Is that so hard? After all these years, you're still playing hard to get. Games fun or not? Kathy's really upset. I demand you apologize today, or we're done." I froze, my mother overheard, and guilt hit me. "Ethan, this is how you treat my daughter?" My mother gritted out. She'd borne our separation thinking I was happy, only now realizing how poorly I'd fared. Ethan fell silent, stunned to hear my mother. Then it hit him. Trembling, Lana was truly gone, thousands of miles away with her parents. Panicked and incredulous, he asked, "Auntie, why do you have Lana's phone? Where is she?" After blurting it out, he explained, "You misunderstood. Lana's jealous and targeted my friend. I just want an apology." My tone was rash. "Please pass her the phone." My mother replied icily, "My daughter never targets anyone. Don't judge her with your filthy thoughts. For her years loving you, I won't trouble you, but stop harassing her, or I'll break your legs," hanging up and wiping tears. I hugged her. "It's fine. Growth needs some trials. It's over now." After she returned my phone, I saw unread messages from friends and colleagues, asking what happened, why Ethan was frantically harassing them, confirming if I was marrying and with whom. "You wouldn't believe it. He's like a lunatic, yelling on the phone," they wrote. "He says it's your fault. Things ended, ruining good days, refusing to apologize, and running to your parents." Once, such words would have left me aggrieved and furious, confronting him on who was wrong and why he'd say this now. It felt insignificant. Just then, he called again, choking up, "If you won't apologize, fine, I forgive you, stop this and come back, let's live well together." Once, such a gesture would have melted me, now, I just found it laughable. "I can't return, wait until after my wedding, I'll call you then, today's my big day, don't disturb my peace. If you think I never formally ended it, here it is, Ethan, stop bothering my friends and colleagues, we're over, and I'm really getting married. As for Kathy, I never directed anyone against her. If you think my jealousy over seeing you two hand in hand, kissing publicly, sharing hotel rooms on trips, or you abandoning our wedding for her counts as targeting, then yes, I felt that once but never again. Mom hearing the call was an accident, not to shame you." I thought I'd been clear, but Ethan just chuckled. "Lana, so desperate to marry? All this just to force me? Come back, I'll marry you now." Speechless, I couldn't fathom what I'd loved in him, still so arrogant. I sent the e-invite, "Mr. Daniel and Ms. Lana cordially invite you and your family to the ceremony." The phone stayed silent long. I turned it off, determined to complete this life event seriously, whoever he was. In the bridal room, the groom's side soon arrived, knocking and slipping red envelopes. The bridesmaid raised an eyebrow. "Our bride has a question for you." A best man outside jumped in. "I'll answer, I know it's about love." "Yes, love, loving only the bride forever." Everyone roared with laughter. The bridesmaid pressed on. "How many relationships has the groom had? Does he know the bride's birthday?" After all questions, the groom spoke again. "I have a question for the bride," he said. The bridesmaid protested. "Grooms don't ask brides you want to take her or not." I asked, "What question?" "Does the bride remember a promise made to a boy 15 years ago?" he replied. My heart skipped. It stirred a nearly forgotten memory. 15 years ago, a severe illness kept me in the hospital for days for treatment and observation. One night, a scared little boy took the next bed, hiding from needles. I coaxed him with candy. "Cooperate with the doctor, and I'll give you candy for life." Unbelievably, it was him. Amid bridesmaids and groomsmen, I watched a tall man pushed in, his Chinese groom attire highlighting his handsome, refined stature. As he and the best men hunted for my shoes, our eyes met, and I blushed, fidgeting awkwardly. We didn't speak en route, yet an inexplicable, tender excitement lingered between us. Suddenly, the wedding convoy halted. A white Porsche blocked us. Ethan, hair wild and eyes bloodshot, leapt out, pounding the window. "Lana, get out. You can't marry him." I gave Daniel a reassuring look and stepped out. He grabbed my hand, smiling. "I'm with you." Seeing us hand in hand, Ethan grew frantic, roaring and lunging. Daniel shielded me, keeping him at bay. "What do you want?" Ethan glared at Daniel hatefully. I worried for Daniel's safety, mind racing for a solution. Daniel declared, "I'm Lana's husband," prompting chuckles from those present. Ethan went berserk. "You're her husband, what am I? Lana's husband can only be me. She's been my devoted fool for years, loving only me. She's just using you to spite me." I held Daniel's hand gently, gazing at Ethan coldly. "Don't be so arrogant, today's my wedding. Daniel's my husband, and I won't let him be hurt or wronged." "Ethan, leave." Ethan looked at me mournfully. "Lana, I know you're doing this on purpose. I see my mistakes. Come back, hit me, scold me, whatever. Kathy's gone. I know I was wrong, all my fault, but aren't you partly to blame? They say love needs both to keep it fresh. You were too good to me. I never feared losing you, so it faded, and I drifted, but I never loved another." I smirked. "I know hand-holding's just childhood habit, street kisses were a game, shared rooms on trips were for her safety, and you jilted me for her because she's special to you, and you didn't want her sad. You've said this so many times." Ethan mumbled, "I'm sorry." Those words felt cheap. "You knew I'd hurt when you did this. What's the point of sorry now?" Ethan couldn't believe my resolve to end it, or that, despite racing here on the earliest flight, he couldn't stop my wedding. His eyes reddened, defeat consuming him. Once, his sadness would have softened me. Now, it only annoyed me. He suddenly pulled out a velvet box with the wedding rings I'd prepared. He'd never worn his, and when I left, I returned mine too. I never expected him to bring them today. Lana, remember these rings? I see my heart now, please come back with me, he pleaded. He reached for me, but Daniel blocked him, towering over him with commanding presence. Mr. Ethan, I've heard some of your story. I won't judge right or wrong, but it's over, so please let go and part amicably, Daniel said. Ethan clenched his fist in rage to strike. My heart leapt, but Daniel swiftly hit him first. Sorry, Mr. Ethan, my reflexes kick in when someone moves to fight. Daniel grinned back at me. Wife, you won't blame me, right? I smiled. Enough, don't delay the wedding, let's go. Ethan clutched his face. Lana, do years of feelings mean less to you than an arranged match? I paused. You know those years and what I gave you understand, so you should know what I want now. Let me go, stopping his pursuit cold. Back in the car with Daniel, I saw Ethan slump to the ground, sobbing in the rearview mirror. I didn't know why he grieved. He chose this, so what's to regret? But that no longer mattered to me. What mattered was my future happiness, which I was certain of. That night, in Daniel's arms, I felt only fulfillment. My phone held a few unread messages. One was from Ethan. He'd left, wouldn't bother me again, and wished me true happiness. 2 years later, friends told me Ethan and Kathy had fallen out. Kathy spread damaging rumors about him and posted his private photos online. Furious, Ethan confronted her. She retorted publicly, "Dare say that photo isn't you? You look decent but are perverse, isn't that you?" In rage, Ethan slapped her. "You're disgusting." She shot back, "Who's disgusting? Who flirted with me despite a fiancé?" Her words stung. Ethan stabbed her abdomen with a fruit knife. Thankfully, timely rescue saved her life, but his future was ruined. But that no longer concerned me.